In the past few years, we've heard the term free agents and been told we would all need to become one in order to succeed. The recent economic structures have helped to promote this concept as reality. Where do we get the tools to take control of our career path in the present and future? Welcome to The Career Confidant with your host, Marie Zimenoff. Marie and her guest experts are here to provide you with the tools you need to move forward and achieve your career goals. Now, here is Marie Zimenoff.
Hello and welcome to the Career Confidant, and you are going to be excited to join today if you are in job search or wanting to advance your career or even just maintain your network so that you don't have to scramble when the next change comes. We are going to be talking about one of the best tools to be able to do all those things, LinkedIn. We're going to be sharing some updates on LinkedIn profiles, what's new with the LinkedIn profile, what we need to be aware of, and how you go about getting found by recruiters. Now, I'm not much of a passive job seeker advocate. You know that I want you to be able to take control of your career. So we'll also talk a little bit about how you can actively use LinkedIn to move forward in your career and how we want to use the tool to really maintain our network or grow our network and build our thought leadership, depending on what we're using it for and what our goals are. There are many different ways that we can achieve those goals. So one of the first things that you'll notice when you log into LinkedIn under your profile, so if you go to LinkedIn, you click on your name, and down below there it drops out the place where you can go to your profile. And the top part of that profile is your visual, your banner. And this is a place where we want to be able to communicate who you are in a visual way. If you have a business, you can put something about your business in there. You can put contact information in there if you'd like to. It's not going to necessarily be easy for people to click on or those types of things, but you can put contact information, website, email, URL, or maybe even a QR code if people might be looking at the screen on their desktop and have their phone with them. Not the easiest to access, but those things are all options. Mostly, I wanted to pop out to people to be different, to be on brand, to be something that reflects who you are and what they're going to read in the rest of your profile. For example, if you are an outdoorsy person and you have an outdoor theme on there, that can work. But then it's nice if there's something in your profile that also mentions that or ties it back to the piece of what you share up there. Sometimes people have a city skyscape, that's fine. But again, many people won't know what that city is, so you want to be clear in your profile and have that pointed to direct where you are in your location if that matches up with that location as well. Sometimes people have pictures of them speaking. If they're a speaker, presenter, or trainer, might have pictures of you doing your work. Whatever is relevant and shows that visual engaging at the very beginning. Of course, we know that visuals are powerful. We look at them first. We process more information from a visual than we do when we read words. So it's that important place in your profile, but you really don't want it to be the gray out, default, if at all possible, having something else in there that is connected to you as a professional. Then that top area is kind of like your card, right? It's got all of your basic information in it. It's got all the things that you need there to demonstrate who you are. Some of those elements it pulls from your profile below, and you're really not much able to do much with that. So, for instance, your university that you attended will show up there at the top. You can turn that off with a checkbox in that section if you don't want it to show your school information. You don't have to. It will show your current company by default. You can also turn that off so that your current company isn't shown there. So you can turn those things off and on as you'd like, but you do have the opportunity to put in a headline. And a few years ago, they raised the amount of characters that you can use in the headline to around 210. The max is 220, but not, everything is always a little bit off with LinkedIn. So I'd say around 200 characters you have for your headline. Now, here's something to think about with that headline. If you have 200 characters and they're all in a block, it's really hard to read, especially on the phone and the mobile view. So if you're going to put in a lot of words, which we'll talk about what that might look like here in a second, but if you're going to put in a lot of words, you want to make sure you have some characters in there to divide up your types of things that you're listing, or maybe you've got your title and then some skills and then a branding statement. That's fine, but I want some kind of markers in there to define those different sections. I use a long arrow in mine, and you can even just go to my profile, Marie Zimenoff. It's pretty easy to find, Z as in zebra, Imenoff, and you can copy the arrows straight from my headline and put them in yours. But those will give you some spreading out of the words so that it's easier to read when you've got a bunch of characters. I'm more in favor of a profile headline that's around 150 characters anyways, because terms in there do contribute to search, but not necessarily more than terms in a few other sections that we'll talk about. And when you have too much in there, it's hard to read. And when a recruiter looks at it in recruiter view, really the thing that they see are about the first 50 characters anyways. So it doesn't help to have a ton more in there in most views, and in some views when you have a ton in there it's just hard to read. So I'd stay around 150 characters, 150 to 200 characters, and those include spaces as well as any letter or some symbol or anything else that you add in there, so that you can do that and create a headline that really says who you are. You want it to be clear and specific. We'll come back to that here in a minute. Let's talk about the rest of this section that you've got up at the very top. So it's going to include your current company if you want it to, your current school if you want it to, and then it's going to include your contact info. I highly encourage you to pick a geographic area. When I see United States as the area, or, in Canada, India, whatever, just as a country, it automatically puts up a red flag to me that might be a fake profile, because it's easier to have a fake profile if you don't choose. So I'd recommend picking the largest metropolitan area closest to you, or where you plan to be networking or job searching if you're planning a move. And you can put where you're headed. You just want to be a little bit careful with that. If you want someone to help you with relocation costs and they think that you live where they are, and it's going to cause some friction. So you can put that desired location in there, but probably only if you're willing to move there on your own dime and expecting to move there, with most certainty in a short amount of time. People do search by location, so it's just important to know that. In the contact information area, you can put up to 3 websites still in that contact information area. And of course, your phone, email, whatever you want to share to be available to your connections. Typically, those things are just available to your connections. And you can change the visibility of those items in your settings, in the privacy settings. So in there, if you are a business owner or you want to have a link that goes to somewhere specific, today you also have the opportunity to do a customized link in that section. When you click on to edit the section, you have the opportunity to add in those websites as well as your custom button. So when you click on the edit for that section, you get to edit your custom button. If you want to have a button under your profile, it's not really a button. It's bold blue letters that people can click to move to the other website that you want to direct them to, at least on most people's profiles. So those are the main sections up there at the top. Let's circle back to the content for your LinkedIn headline. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a few different elements that I usually include in a headline. One is the title or titles that you are directly targeting with your next move. Why you want to do that is because those are immensely important keywords for recruiter search. So recruiters are going to use the search in their system or even in an external search like Bing or Google. They're going to use search, and they're mostly going to be searching by job titles. So I'm looking to recruit a director of marketing. I'm looking to recruit a manager of engineering. I'm going to search for those job titles, and I want them to be in your headline. Not just because of search results, but because then when I'm quickly skimming through my results, I want to be able to see that you've got the title for someone, the someone that I'm looking for. You can research those titles in a few different ways to make sure you're using the right keywords. You want to start with the titles of the jobs that you're targeting, and then you also want to think about the titles that they might be searching on LinkedIn, which you can find looking at the popularity of job postings. So you can look at job postings and see what types of titles are used for the things you're looking for. And then there's some other sites and places that you can search for titles, like in the resume feature inside of LinkedIn. But you want to use those titles that really do reflect the jobs that you'd be aiming for, that you want to get found for. That's going to be important there in the headline. Then you would also want to include any keywords that might be important that someone would be searching. And you want to think about this very specific related to the job that you're targeting. We don't want these to be generic, like great communication skills, right? We want them to be very specific to the skills that you have that someone would be searching for the jobs that you do. So again, analyzing some job descriptions, you can use some AI tools to analyze those job descriptions now too, and just really identify those keywords that make the most sense. And then you're also going to include what I like to call a brand tagline or a branding statement. And this tells me how you do what you do differently than other people who do what you do, or some key accomplishments that fit into what you've done. Something short, it's going to have to be crisp and clean and short, but I want you to tell me how you are different. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I will read through a few example headlines for you so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about, and we'll dive deeper into the About section and other sections of the profile. If you are a job seeker and you're looking for someone to help you with your profile, go over to the ResumeWritingAcademy.com. We have a list of trained providers on our site, ResumeWritingAcademy.com, where you can find a provider. If you are a writer and want to take your LinkedIn profile writing to the next level, we are having a training on June 5th. We're having a training related to our resume writing. How do we do that in LinkedIn profiles? And so you can join us for that too. You'll see that on the ResumeWritingAcademy.com. Under our featured training, we're going to be talking about taking your LinkedIn profile from generic to genius. We're going to take a short break and talk to you about how you can do that today as we go through some headline examples and the rest of your profile when we return here on The Career Confidant. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
Follow Voice America at Facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
You know that the career landscape has changed and that you need to be proactive about managing your career. You can have the foresight, skills, and confidence you need to take charge of your career and seize opportunities. A strategic advantage and career expert, Marie Zimenoff has helped thousands of leaders like you get focused, get found, and get hired. Visit getcareersmart.com to find out more. That's getcareersmart.com or call 800-521-2080 to schedule your complimentary consultation.
Voice America programs are now available on your favorite connected device, including Amazon, Alexa, and Google Home. Through streams with Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio, listening to your favorite show is as easy as saying the show name followed by the word podcast.
Hey, Alexa, play Finding Your Frequency podcast.
If that doesn't work, try adding on TuneIn or on iHeartRadio or on Apple Podcasts.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are tuned in to The Career Confidant with Marie Zimenoff. If you have a question or comment for Marie or her guest today, please call 1-866-472-5790. That's 1-866-472-5790. You may also send an email to marie@strategicadvantage.com. Now, back to The Career Confidant.
Hello and welcome back to the Career Confidant. And today we've been talking about your LinkedIn profile and how you can write a profile that really gets found, but also engages people that get over to it. Because if you're just keyword stuffing, it's not going to, make me want to read it. And if you're copying and pasting your resume, you're really missing out on an opportunity to engage more with that reader. They're going to read both, and whichever one they read second, they're not going to spend much time on if everything is exactly the same. So we'll talk about that in the About section, how we really get a balance of new ways of saying things without introducing totally new information, because then it can feel like it's confusing. All right, so we talked a little bit about the headline, and we are going to be talking about different ways to do the headline, different options to mix things together. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can use artificial intelligence, especially generative AI. They don't recommend using LinkedIn's AI tools. And the reason that I say that is because they are just so generic, vanilla. They really aren't doing you much for what you can get for free from ChatGPT or Gemini or even Copilot can probably write a better headline than LinkedIn's tools right now. The best thing to do on the front end is, of course, really understand what types of jobs you're targeting, what is required by those jobs, what job titles are those titles, and then some of the keywords or key skills that they'll be looking for. Making sure to focus in on the hard skills first. Of course, we're going to include the soft skills, but we want to make sure we get those hard skills in there because those are the things that people are most likely going to be searching by. So when we think about our headline, again, we've got 120 possible, we went up from 120 to 220 possible characters, but I recommend staying somewhere between 150 and 200 and using some breaking up symbols to make it easier to read. We want to include those titles that we know we are searching for, that people are looking for when they're searching for someone like us. We want to include a few of those really important keywords, those differentiating words that are required for every job, right, that we're applying for, that are hard skills. And then we can have some kind of a branding statement of how do you do what you do? What are those differentiators that you have from other people who do what you do? So what might some of these sound like? I'm just going to share a few of these with you, some that I've written over the years, and just being able to communicate how we want that to go over with people on the other end. And we're always remembering that you're going to adjust these for what works for you in your job search. And you're going to mix around the elements in a way that works for you. So making sure that you are putting what matters first. Typically put the job titles first, then keywords or the other piece of it, the branding statement, are a little bit more interchangeable depending on what you think is most important. Okay, so after you have your focus here, and then I'm going to write the headline. And I will say that it might be easier to write the headline at the end of reworking your content versus at the beginning, but we're going to go kind of step by step through the profile here. So I'm going to start with some headlines. So healthcare CIO with a human touch, transforming disruptive technologies into tools that serve patients and providers. And then I'd have room still to put a few keywords after that. Middle school art teacher, joyful educator who liberates and encourages the artistic vision of every student. So fits more with that philosophy piece. And then I might put some keywords around the level, maybe grade level, maybe any particular artistic modalities or methods that I'm teaching, those types of things. Senior account manager, I tell stories of business success, challenge, and opportunity through the magic of numbers. Maybe putting in some business results with that would be nice. And of course, then some other keywords that might go along with that. Strategic global CEO, COO, who turns around operations to deliver improvement in process, cost, quality, and productivity. I'd have some room for some keywords there, or maybe a specific accomplishment, like a little tiny win, which I think I have an example here in a second. And then award-winning professional speaker, small biz consultant, inspiring owners and leaders to realize untapped potential. So we really get that idea of what you do. Even if you're a speaker, trainer, you could try some of those other words in there, try them, see what people are searching for. You can even use something like Google Analytics just to see the popularity of terms in search, and that can help you figure out what terms to put into a LinkedIn profile if you're not in a traditional kind of role to do traditional kinds of job search, where we can use some of those LinkedIn tools to do that. Let's see, last one here. Top performing key account sales professional with a record of exceeding sales, profit, and market share goals, including a 150% quota during a down market in the medical services industry, right? You can put in whatever it is that you might want to put in that is specific in addition to putting in some of those other pieces. Now, a few little warnings here is, as I said, you don't want to go on and on. You want to have some statements. You want to have things that break it up, make it easy to read. And you may include some name dropping. You know, if you worked at Amazon, Google, or you were a consultant to Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, blah, 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 you might put some of those in there. But be careful with that, because if I want to know who you are and what you do, what does those choices say about you? Does it match up to your current target industry? Does it add value to them? Do they see the relevance? You just want to ask yourself all those questions. We don't want to assume that, of course, everybody's going to want to work with me because I worked with XYZ company. You really want to think about your target audience and how all of the statements and any specific name dropping that you might do would connect to that audience specifically. So in your headline, it's really that opportunity to grab the attention, to show up. When you do show up in search, again, if I'm especially a recruiter and I'm thumbing through search, I'm just going to see a little snippet of that. And if you just have the title, then you're going to fit in with the crowd. Everybody's got their title. If you have just a little bit more, or the start of a branding statement that I can see, maybe the first few words, it's going to build that intrigue for me to click over and see more, versus all the other people that just have a title in their headline and nothing else. And they just aren't attracting that attention, especially when they're in a list compared to other candidates who are doing a little bit more. So that's the top part of your profile, headline, some comments there. And the only thing really new to that section is the button that you can add to a place. You can still record your name if you want to have the pronunciation of your name. You do have to record that on your phone. You can't record it when you're on the desktop version, but you can hear other people's on the desktop version. And you just go in that top part of your profile, hit the little edit button when you're on your phone, and you'd be able to record that name there. So you want to do that. You can't have a video anymore, so you used to have this little profile video thing. They took that away for everyone, so don't go searching for that, and get your headline figured out for yourself as well. So in the About section is a place where you get to make a personal introduction. And I always use the metaphor of this as if someone was, meeting you at a networking event, and they said, well, what do you do? So you get that opportunity to give a conversational first-person introduction to who you are and what you do. We want it to go beyond the summary of your resume. Summary of your resume is probably very succinct, maybe has a few results in it, tells a little bit about who you are, but probably is very fluffy. We don't want resume summaries to be very fluffy. Here in the LinkedIn profile, I also don't want a lot of fluff, but I do want some information about who you are. And I give you at least 3 different ways to think about this. So you could talk about what we call your discovery story or your origin story. How did you get into what you do? Or how did you get into this specific job that you're in? Although remember that your profile isn't about your current job, it's about you. And so you want it to be broader than your current job. And this is true even if you're running your own company. Yes, your company is going to be a big part of your profile, but you want your intro to be more engaging and more connective than just talking about your current company. So you could talk about how you got into what you do, why you do what you do. That's kind of the discovery piece. The drive is why you keep doing it. So what keeps you coming back to that work? What are some of those stories of transformation that motivate you when you're having a rough day and you think back to, oh yeah, this is why I do what I do. You think about some of those stories and how you might weave those into your profile. There may be little chunks of them in your resume, but here we get the opportunity to really expand and say more about whatever that is. So go ahead and write those in your idea bank of your stories, the discover as well as the drive. And then the differentiate stories are really about how do you do things differently than others who do your same role. If you were to not show up to work one day, right? What would not get done, or what would get done in a different way? And then you want to connect those stories and that value to the current role that you're targeting. What about that story makes sense to share for this particular audience that you might be wanting to read your profile right now? Why would they care about those stories and that accomplishment you had somewhere else? What about that connects to these new stories? So this is where we get into the idea of storytelling, which sometimes people, even a lot of our trained writers, get a little confused at. If I tell a story, won't people tune out? And this is the magic of both the stories you choose to tell, so picking stories that are really relevant to your audience, and then the language that you use to tell them. So using the language that's going to resonate with your audience. And you want to brainstorm the stories first, then choose those stories that are really going to resonate, and then put in the language of the future hiring manager. And always great if you can run that by someone, have someone help you read it, and weave in those stories. They don't need to be long. We don't want a lot of fluff. It's really being able to pare the story down to what really matters. And of course, if you are a professional writer and you want some ideas and tools to help you do that, as I said, we're having a session on June 5th. Denise Bittler and I will be talking about profiles, going step-by-step through sections of how do you do that. We'll also be talking about how you use artificial intelligence tools to help you do this so that you can, we still want to use your stories, your client stories. We want to use real stories, but we can use AI to help kind of curate those stories into profiles for us and the About section. So we are going to be doing that on June 5th. At 3 p.m. Eastern, and you can find that session if you go to rwa.training/LinkedIn Genius, because remember, we're talking about taking your profile from generic to genius. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'm going to read a few, not too many, but a few, about sections for you so you can get a picture of how these stories could flow, and you can get an idea, start to get some ideas for what yours might be coming together as. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Voice America is on LinkedIn. Connect with us today.
You know that the career landscape has changed and that you need to be proactive about managing your career. You can have the foresight, skills, and confidence you need to take charge of your career and seize opportunities. A strategic advantage and career expert, Marie Zimenoff has helped thousands of leaders like you get focused, get found, and get hired. Visit getcareersmart.com to find out more. That's getcareersmart.com or call 800-521-2080 to schedule your complimentary consultation.
Have you become a member yet? Sign up now to become a member of Voice America. It's always free and easy. Plus, you get to take advantage of some great member benefits. Get unlimited access to millions of hours of on-demand content across all of our channels. Keep track of your favorite episodes, shows, and hosts in your own customizable library. Find out what shows you might be interested in based on your favorites. Plus, you get insider access with our newsletter. Membership gives you more. Sign up at voiceamerica.com and click register at the top right.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are tuned in to The Career Confidant with Marie Zimenoff. If you have a question or comment for Marie or her guest today, please call 1-866-472-5790. That's 1-866-472-5790. You may also send an email to marie@strategicadvantage.com. Now, back to the Career Confidant.
Hello and welcome back to the Career Confidant. And today we've been talking about your LinkedIn profile and how you can make sure that you're getting your points across in a way that's engaging, not just telling the, copy and paste from your resume, but to really be able to share and engage your reader. And I mentioned this in the last segment, but when you're writing your About section, so this is the first section in your LinkedIn profile, you want to use that first-person voice. So I, me, my, those types of pronouns, right, where it's specific to you. You're telling it like I met you at an event, and you really are working on making it that engaging place where I can read about you like you're telling me. When we use the third person, Marie Zimenoff does blah, 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 it sounds like someone else is introducing you to me. And that can be appropriate for some, if you are a high-level CEO and you really want your brand to be that removed, very professional, that might work for you to use the third person. If you're going for more accessible, modern leader, you probably still want to use that first person voice. It is your profile, your personal profile, not a company profile. So having that first person voice makes the most sense. And we do want to include similar information to what you'd have in your resume, but just more depth, interest, intrigue, person, more of the person than you get in the resume, which is typically more of the accomplishments and what you did, a little bit of the how in your resume, and in your profile, it's really the who. So we still have the how in there, and we definitely still have the what, but now we're adding in some of the who. Who are you? Why do you do what you do? What are you, what's so interesting about that? So here are a few examples. So this one was for a technology person I was working with who wanted to get out of a tech business that he had started and go back into tech development leadership in a business, in a more like Fortune 500. So balancing structure and agility while developing technology solutions for business. This has been one of the key lessons in my career and a foundation for my success managing and building sophisticated services and products from startup through maturity. The oscillation between business and technology started in business when at 17 I grew a ski tour business through basic marketing strategies large corporations use, although I was clueless at the time. This enterprising spirit was shaped and inspired by a few role models along the way. And it talks about the role models. I'm not going to read all of those to you. And then having survived the silos of big companies and entrepreneurship where it's up to me to make everything happen, I bring a unique perspective to technology leadership. I understand the urgency of business and the pushback from IT to do it right, the need for structure and the opportunity cost of not being agile. So when you think about the difference that you bring, that's what I'm speaking to. Sometimes we want to sweep it under the rug that I've been an entrepreneur and now I'm going back to Fortune 500, but you really can't. And if we can at all translate it into a benefit, we want to do that. So those are the stories that come together that help us really build a unique profile for you and who you are. And you can see a little bit of the discovery story there, right? When at 17, I started a ski tour business. So that's how I got started in business. And then we learn about the people that have helped us along the way. That brings out the person side of it, as well as the leadership piece, because we talk about the leaders that helped him become the leader that he was. And so we get that combination of human and, hard skills that we need to make it go together. All right, let's find another one here. So this is for a student. Sometimes for younger people, it can be hard to think about this, but for students, I actually think these are much easier and fun because, you might not have a lot of accomplishments, but it's more about who are you and why do you want to do what you want to do. So teaching English in Uganda and Russia, establishing a foundation in memory of a classmate, and volunteering at the Special Olympics have helped me gain a slightly different perspective than many of my peers. This perspective has been helpful in interacting with 3,000 students in intramural programs at my university, analyzing the interactions between government policy and environmental issues during my studies. Of course, environmental policy law and government budgets are much more complex than we can experience in class. In my next challenge, I'll get more insight into these issues in the real world. And then a call to action, which I'd love to have at the end of a profile. I welcome your suggestions for groups to join, organizations to follow, or reading on environmental policy issues. Better yet, if you have the need for a respectful, diligent intern, contact me at, and then it provides an email address or a phone number, whatever you're comfortable with. So this gives you an opportunity to say who you are. It doesn't have to be lengthy. Yes, you have 2,500 characters in this section. You don't have to use them all. Getting keywords in there is important. So in that last one, you talk about governmental agencies, policy, environmental issues. We talked about how the person had learned those in class because those were going to be some of the keywords. So we do want to get our words in there, but it doesn't always have to be, max out those characters. I typically tell people to stay closer to 2,000 anyways, because it's always funky and you can never guess. Everything counts as a character. I would recommend not using any fancy fonts. So you can go and do symbol creation and it will create bold fonts for you that you can post in here. But I wouldn't recommend doing that because it won't be able to be read by a screen reader if someone is trying to read it is using a screen reader. And it takes up more of your characters. So just stick with the normal fonts. You can still use some symbols. Those will count as a character. Don't overdo it. This is an Instagram, so we don't want a whole bunch of emojis in there. But you can use a few characters to help with readability. And mostly, biggest thing is short paragraphs. When you're on your phone, look at your profile on your phone. I really don't want those paragraphs to be any longer than 4 or 5 lines on your phone, which means they've got to be kind of short. And then we want to make them easy to read so that they flow, shorter sentences, and making it easy to read on a screen is important. That about section in past years has kind of had a little bit of demotion. So it was like down underneath the featured section and down underneath your activity. And now for some profiles at least, and we'll see what happens, but LinkedIn had said that they were going to move that up in profiles and put it a little bit higher again. First thing to notice with this section, though, is that if someone is looking for an employee, it's likely that they'll read that section later. They're going to look at your job titles, they're going to look at your experience section, and make sure you're qualified before they spend time reading about you. And it's kind of like a cover letter in that way. So yes, we want to have that first person introduction. We want it to be engaging. We want to have our stories in there. And we don't want to assume that people are going to read it before they decide if we're qualified. So if you have something specific that someone needs to see about you, that needs to go in one of your experience sections if at all possible. Okay, so that about section gives you a really opportunity to connect, to tell your story. Who are you? Why do you do what you do? Those types of things we've woven in with the hard skills and what I need to know about you to know that you're qualified. We're going to get our keywords in there, right? You've researched your keywords, you've researched your titles. You're going to put those in there as well. All right, so experience section. Sometimes, and even working with our professional writers with this, it's really tempting just to copy and paste your job descriptions in there. But if I'm reading your resume as a hiring manager, likely the first section I'm going to in your resume is the experience section, going to look at where'd you work, who'd you work for, what were your titles, and then I'm going to your LinkedIn profile, and if the exact same information is copied and pasted, you've lost an opportunity for that person to keep paying attention to you. Right now I'm moving on to the next candidate because it was all just copy and paste. You don't want to introduce new information, but we can introduce context around that information that we weren't able to share in the resume. So I can tell more about what I did. I can give a little bit more detail. I can tell the story, why were we doing this? What was going on? I can add in some of those details in the experience sections of LinkedIn that I didn't get in the other sections. You have 1,500 characters in each LinkedIn experience section where you can really put in all the detail that you want, all the story. You still want to make it relevant and flow and connect what the people are looking for, but you have that opportunity to get in a little bit more context. The other important piece of the experience section that many people don't pay attention to is your titles. So each title field in the experience section has 110 characters, and that's a lot. That's almost as much as the headline feature used to be. So you can, in that section, put your title that you were or translate to the most relevant title. So, for instance, I worked with a gentleman once whose title had been the Director of Fun, but he was a Director of HR. And when he was going to apply for different jobs, putting Director of Fun just wasn't going to run, nobody's searching for that. It wasn't going to come up well. So we put in Director of HR, and then he put Director of Fun in parentheses, or you could even put that in the description of the job if you don't have enough space in the headline. Then you can put in information about the actual job, what you'd accomplish, what you can put a little snippet in there, or other keywords, or other titles. So you could say, similar to this title, or whatever it might be, gives you that opportunity to just put in some more information. Here's a few examples, and these are all under 110 characters. Equity partner and senior VP growth strategy, honed value proposition to capture commitment of 5 Fortune 500s. So we get a little win in there as well as the title. Senior VP growth and acquisition strategy / equity partner. Those are the titles that someone would be searching for with someone like me. Then we have a little arrow, identified potential suitors, built value proposition. Or maybe if you're, ready to go all out, VP technology and innovation, open new verticals and grew customer businesses while reviving $650 million operation. So that's 110 characters. You use, M for millions, obviously $. You can get all of that in there. Give not just the titles and the keywords, but also that little win. Go to LinkedIn. Look at somebody's profile on your phone, and you'll notice that the titles of each experience jump off the page. They are just stand out. They go beyond everything else you can say. See, those matter. Put some thought into what you use. Don't just give me 2 words, director of engineering. No, I want more. Give me some keywords. Give me your top win in that job. Something that makes you stand out from all the other profiles I'm looking at that say director of engineering. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'll read just a few experience sections for you so you can get an idea of how those might flow, and we will wrap this up with a little bow of things you can take away with you and start implementing on your LinkedIn profile. Don't forget, if you're a professional writer or you want to hang out with some, you can join us for our session on June 5th, rwa.training/LinkedIn Genius. We'll be right back here on Career Confidant in just a few minutes.
Voice America is on your favorite smart speaker. If you have Alexa or Google Home, go ahead and give us a try.
Hey Alexa, play Finding Your Frequency podcast on TuneIn.
You know that the career landscape has changed and that you need to be proactive about managing your career. You can have the foresight, skills, and confidence you need to take charge of your career and seize opportunities. A strategic advantage and career expert, Marie Zimenoff has helped thousands of leaders like you get focused, get found, and get hired. Visit getcareersmart.com to find out more. That's getcareersmart.com or call 800-521-2080 to schedule your complimentary consultation.
A little birdie told me Voice America is on X. Follow us at Voice America TRN.
Are you a business owner, 1099 contractor, part-time employee, or volunteer who needs group health coverage you can actually afford? Do you know a nonprofit who would benefit from unlimited zero-cost funding? How about cost reduction, school safety, mental health wellness, and more? All these and more are fair game on Finding Certainty. If you want more certainty in your own life, you are not alone. Join us each Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern on the Voice America Business Channel. Find your own brand of certainty and realize your personal American dream with Finding Certainty, hosted by Patrick Lang. Let's unwrap the certainty experience together.
Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business.
You are tuned in to the Career Confidant with Marie Zimenoff. If you have a question or comment for Marie or her guest today, please call 1-866-472-5790. That's 1-866-472-5790. You may also send an email to marie@strategicadvantage.com. Now, back to the Career Confidant.
Welcome back to the Career Confidant, and today we've been taking a little stroll through your LinkedIn profile and talking about how you might improve that profile for your job search, moving up in your career, or even building your business. So when we were talking about the experience section, it's really a place for you to connect the dots between what you've done and, yes, those accomplishments that you've had, and then how you do that and what the story was behind it. So you're only going to get to put a little tiny bit of that in your resume, but in your profile you have that space to really just talk about what you did and to highlight what was important. There's one other aspect of this I want to go into before I read a few experience sections, is that under your About section, there's this top skills feature where 5 skills are highlighted in kind of a call-out box, and they've got a little diamond by them. You really want to be thoughtful about the skills you put in that section. I was talking to a tech executive the other day, and there are a bunch of kind of lower-level communication skills in there. We don't want that. Yes, it's fine to have some soft skills, but we want them to be at the right level. So executive leadership, team formation, whatever it might be that's at that higher level, not at a wrong level for wherever you're aiming. For him, it needed to be that executive level. And, of course, the most important hard skills. So a mix, 2 and 3, 3 and 2, whatever you think is appropriate for the hard skills and soft skills. But those are the first things that someone sees about your skills. They really pop. So make sure that you have chosen them strategically up there as your top 5 skills under your About section. Then you've got the same thing under each experience section where you have the experience, the title that we were talking about. We really use those 110 characters. Then the description, which I'm going to read a few for you here in just a second. And then you have the skills that are connected to that job. This is another area where you want to be thoughtful. You can connect a bunch of skills to each job, but it's going to start getting overwhelming and not as useful if you don't include the ones that are really the most pertinent, the most relevant to not just that job, but also to where you want to go in the future. And you can list 100 skills now in the skills section of LinkedIn, but I wouldn't go in there and just start putting whatever you can. Go through and research what skills your competitors are using, research what skills are connected to the jobs you want to do, start typing in skills that you've gotten out of job descriptions and see what pops up, because if you select from the drop-down menu when you're putting in skills, those are much more likely to be searched and found because they're part of LinkedIn's database. So you want to use those skills that are parts of their drop-down menus as much as possible. And you can put, 4 or 5 job descriptions into OpenAI, generative AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, even Copilot, doesn't really matter as long as you've got the characters to be able to put in the job descriptions, which is sometimes a problem with the free versions. But in the free version of ChatGPT, Gemini, you can put in quite a bit of information. So copy the most important pieces out of the job descriptions. You don't need the company information and that type of thing. Copy the most important pieces in, and then you just ask ChatGPT or Gemini to tell you the most important keywords out of those descriptions. And you can start putting those into your LinkedIn profile. Again, see which ones pop up in the drop-down when you start typing something in, and choose those for your skills, and then match those skills to the job so that they show up under each job. Then you've started to build your keyword. Yes, you can be recognized and found, and you put in your stories. Those keywords will all add to the mix so that you can show up in people's searches, and then also be engaging, right? You want them to read your experience section beyond what was in the resume because you're putting in a little bit more information. So let me read a few of these for you. So one is a technology person. So bringing disruptive technology to market isn't easy. Businesses may not understand the value in data and want data that doesn't exist before they'll take a risk. When I saw the technical mastermind behind XYZ company was doing, I knew it was valuable, and there was an opportunity for me to improve the value proposition so companies could see the value too. Together, we brought the first augmented virtual reality content publishing solution to market. My role was creating the growth strategy with a competitive bid model to raise equity funds and scale market adoption. Calling on trusted relationships with business leaders to understand the market need, I improved positioning and garnered interest. The results, we secured proof of concept commitments from 5 Fortune 500 companies. So it's a little bit more than you would have gotten in the ... that's going to happen in the interview or in the resume, right? You would have just had bullet. We get a little bit of the context, a little bit of the story, a little bit of background so that it feels that difference that we can bring into it. So I encourage you to just think about how you can weave in a little bit more story and engagement in your profiles so that people want to read them. And then don't just let your profile sit there. Go and find the people who hire someone like you, who need to know someone like you, and start engaging with their content or engaging with their comments on other people's content or reaching out to them and connecting, although I much prefer that you've engaged with someone's content or comments before you do that cold connection email or message on LinkedIn. Find those people and start engaging with them around your thought leadership, around the issues that are going on in your industry, having conversations that put you in the conversation, right? That put your name in their mouth before you even would apply to the role. We want to not just sit around and wait to get found, but to go out there and start building relationships and having conversations with people who are in your sphere where you want to be engaged anyways, and you want to be a part of those conversations. If you, again, are looking for help with your profile, go to resumewritingacademy.com. We've got trained writers there that can help you with your profile, and many of them are also trained in helping you use that profile. Our digital branding strategists is what we call those. So we will be back here again on Career Confidant next week, and we look forward to answering any questions if you have any questions about making your LinkedIn profile more effective. We'll be right back here again next week on the Career Confidant.
Thank you for listening to the Career Confidant. Marie Zimenoff will return again with another terrific guest next Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific on the Voice America Business Channel. Be sure to join us then.